I came home earlier than usual and immediately knew something was off. There's a kind of silence that doesn't settle, it waits. It crouches in corners, creeps along the walls, presses its ear to the floorboards like it's listening for movement. That's the silence I stepped into. The silence of something unfinished, something shameful. I didn't call out her name. I didn't say I was home. I just stood in the doorway and waited. My shoes were still on. My keys still in my hand. But the house had already told me what I needed to know. The air was wrong, heavy, and used. Our house was never this quiet. Usually, there'd be some sound. The hum of her audiobook in the kitchen, the low murmur of a morning show, the vacuum cleaner whining through the hall. Rachel never liked silence, said it reminded her of growing up alone. But that day, the silence was almost surgical. I stepped further in. The living room looked untouched. Blanket folded neatly on the couch, her slippers still by the fireplace. No open laptop, no phone charging, just a hollow kind of order. But then, as I rounded the corner toward the hallway, I saw them. 2 wine glasses, still damp. One had a smudge of lipstick. The other didn't. They were placed awkwardly on the thin shelf outside the bathroom door, not set down so much as abandoned. Beside them, a coffee mug, still steaming. Rachel's favorite one. The handle chipped where she'd dropped it years ago during one of our late-night arguments. She kept it anyway, said the break gave it character. The bathroom door was closed, locked. Steam was seeping out beneath it, slow and curling, like breath from a dying animal. I stood there, staring at the gap at the bottom of the door, watching the fog roll across the hallway tiles. That's when I heard her voice, soft, firm. Not scared, not even startled, just cold. Don't come in. 3 words. I didn't move. I didn't say anything, because she never showered in the morning. Not once in the 8 years we'd lived together. Not unless she was sick. Not unless she was trying to scrub something off that water wouldn't touch. That bathroom, the one we painted together in our first year of marriage, suddenly looked like a stage. And I was no longer a part of the script. I stepped closer. The latch on the outside of the door was one I had installed last year. She'd begged me for it after the door jammed during a thunderstorm and she had been stuck for 20 minutes. Please, she said, her voice muffled behind the door. Just something simple, just in case. So I gave her what she wanted. A small brass latch, easy to slide from the hallway, easy to unlock, quietly, while steam and guilt filled the air behind it. I didn't use it, not yet. I just stood there, hand hovering near it, heart flat in my chest, and pulled out my phone instead. I didn't text her. I didn't threaten. I didn't demand. I called someone I had never spoken to before. Someone I wasn't even supposed to know existed. His wife. She picked up before the first ring finished. There was no surprise in her voice. No hesitation. No panic. Just this tired, practiced calm, the kind of tone someone uses when they've already rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. I said my name. I said I was Rachel's husband. There was silence on the other end. Then, I'll be there in 20. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at the wine glasses again. Then I slid the latch open. But I didn't push the door. I didn't need to. Instead, I walked back down the hallway and into the kitchen. The kitchen I had rebuilt myself after the water damage last spring. The one she said made our house feel fresh. I sat down at the table, opened my laptop, and logged in to our joint account. There were 2 tabs already open, browser history from the night before. One was a vacation package, flights, hotel, rental car, all booked, all under my name. The other tab was a Pinterest board titled Orlando Memories, just us, full of images of smiling couples, spa resorts, champagne breakfasts. She had called it just for us. Her voice had cracked when she said it. She had clutched my hand, looked me in the eye, promised me we were getting back on track, that this trip was our reset button, that she wanted to fall in love with me again. She never mentioned he'd be coming too. I closed both tabs, opened the banking dashboard. The cursor hovered over the account labeled Joint Household. I clicked Close Account. The system warned me, this will terminate access for all secondary users. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yes, I was sure. The account split cleanly. My half funneled into the backup account I had opened months ago, an account Rachel didn't know about. At the time, I told myself it was just in case. But even then, I think I already knew. Then I opened the travel portal, canceled the flights, canceled the hotel, canceled the spa treatments she had booked under both our names, canceled the car rental. The system asked, "Are you sure you want to cancel your reservation?" I clicked yes. The refund email arrived seconds later. I didn't forward it to her. I left everything else untouched. The house, the furniture, the bills. I had no interest in claiming what was already rotting. 20 minutes passed. No movement behind the bathroom door. No apologies. No shouting. Just silence and the occasional hiss of water cooling on tile. I sat there, unmoving, listening to every second that ticked away, not with rage, but with the slow satisfaction of clarity. I had suspected before, but this was confirmation, not the first crack, the collapse. I heard the water stop, heard the towel slide off the rack, heard the creak of the door hinges as it slowly opened. She stepped out like someone waking from anesthesia. Her hair was soaked, her eyes puffy, her hands clenched at the towel wrapped around her chest. She didn't look at me. I didn't stand. She took a single breath, tried to speak, failed. There was nothing left to say. Not here. Not after the steam, the glasses, the voice behind the door. Not after "Don't come in." I looked at her for a moment, and then I turned away. She stood there, dripping water onto the hardwood floor I had spent weeks refinishing, and said nothing, because she knew. She knew who I had called. She knew what I had canceled. And she knew, for the first time, that I wasn't going to save her this time. We didn't talk. Not that day. Not the day after. Not when she slipped into clothes and crept barefoot through the house. Like she didn't want to wake the damage she'd done. Like shame made noise and she couldn't afford to be heard. I didn't follow her. Didn't ask questions. I sat at the kitchen table where I'd canceled everything. Where the coffee had long gone cold. Where the second wine glass, his still left a faint, oily ring on the wood. A little proof for anyone who needed it. I didn't wipe it away. Then the doorbell rang. I stood up slowly, walked to the front door, and opened it without a word. They were all there. His wife, the one I'd called, wearing a black raincoat, even though the sky was clear. She looked like a woman who'd been waiting for a reason. Next to her stood a girl, maybe 10, their daughter, holding her mother's hand but looking straight ahead like she already knew what kind of man her father really was. And beside them, my sister. She didn't need an explanation either. I hadn't told her much. Just sent a folder that morning with everything she would need. Insurance files, account transfers, **TS of messages, hotel receipts, and call logs with timestamps. She'd said, "I'll be there in 20, and she was, finally at the back, him, tall, fumbling for his phone like it was a wee **P***N, a story ready to be spun. You could see it forming on his lips. It's not what it looks like. I can explain. Let's not do this here." But he didn't get a word out, because Rachel stepped out of the hallway, hair half dry, face pale, barefoot. She didn't flinch when she saw them, didn't gasp or cry, just froze like a deer that knew the headlights had finally found her. Her eyes drifted to the child, the only innocent person standing in that doorway. The child didn't look away. The man swallowed hard, and I could feel him about to speak. I cut the moment short. I handed the folder to my sister. She nodded, didn't even open it, just tucked it under her arm like it was a list of debts someone was finally going to collect. No one spoke. No one needed to. I turned, walked to the cabinet near the garage door, and pulled out what was mine, a small box. Years ago, Rachel had joked that it was my junk drawer, but there was nothing junk in it. It was what I had brought into the marriage, what I'd held on to when everything else blurred into ours. My original driver's license, my grandfather's pocket knife, a key to the garage, the one I built with my own hands, And a photo. An old one. Just me before any of this. Before I started folding myself into the life of a woman who had already been broken in ways I didn't understand. I slid the box into my bag. Rachel stepped forward. "Please don't." I turned to face her. Not angry, just done. "You're destroying everything," she whispered. I stared at her, long enough to make her shift her weight, like she thought I might scream. But there was nothing left in me to raise. "No," I said. "You broke it. I'm just not fixing it anymore." Then I walked past her. No suitcase, no grand goodbye, no final speech. Just the creak of the door swinging open and the wind catching my collar. I didn't slam it shut, just let it click behind me, and I never looked back. Later that evening, after I drove through 2 towns and turned off the highway onto a narrow county road, I found it. The trailer was small, barely 10 feet wide, set back in a grove of pine trees just south of Bloomington. Cheap siding, a rusted step, but it was quiet, isolated. The kind of place that didn't ask questions when you paid a month in cash and didn't want a receipt. The man who handed me the key said, "You okay?" Not out of concern, just habit. "I will be," I replied. Inside, it smelled of dust and dry air. The furniture was thin and old, but the mattress didn't creak when I sat down. The water ran hot, and no one was hiding behind any doors. That night I slept, not the kind of sleep that heals, that comes later or never, but the kind of sleep that comes after you've put out the fire and walked away from the ashes. When the sirens fade and you're finally allowed to collapse. It was quiet, the first honest quiet I'd heard in years. I woke with the sun and didn't check my phone. Instead, I opened the laptop again, the same one I'd used to sever our account, and began peeling away the last threads that tied me to Rachel. Removed her access from every account, email, cloud storage, the backup drive we shared for family photos, the emergency banking line, the shared streaming logins. All of it. It was like removing stitches from a wound that never closed right. I deleted the Orlando folder from my computer, the one she'd filled with travel ideas, couples massages, fancy dinners with dress codes I never liked. Gone. By noon, an email from a divorce attorney hit my inbox. Subject line, filing timeline, initial consultation. I replied instantly. Just 2 words, "File now." And with that, it was official. There would be no mediation, no counseling, no letters read aloud in soft, pleading voices. I wasn't interested in redemption. I left her the house, the furniture, the SUV, everything but the deed, because that house had my name on the title. Not ours, just mine. A detail she hadn't noticed when I bought it for her. Or maybe she had and thought I would forget, but I hadn't. A week later, I got a call from the insurance office. Rachel had tried to access the policy, claimed she was still authorized to make adjustments. She wasn't. The woman on the phone asked me if I wanted to block all future attempts. "Yes," I said. "Do you want to be notified if she tries again?" I paused. Then, "No, I don't care anymore." That night, I got a text from Rachel's mother. Not a question, a judgment. "You're being too extreme. This isn't what family does." I didn't respond. The next day, there was a knock at the trailer door. Not loud, not desperate. I opened it. Rachel. No makeup, no anger, just small, like someone who'd walked into a storm without checking the forecast. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. "You're really disappearing?" she asked. There was no drama in her voice, just quiet confusion, like she had expected me to punish her, shout, sleep in the garage for a few nights, and then forgive, because I always had. Every cold shoulder, every silent treatment, every lie about where she'd been and why her phone was on silent. I had always stayed, and now I wasn't. "You asked me to," I said. She blinked. "I didn't mean." "Yes," I interrupted. "You did. You just didn't think I'd listen." She didn't cry. She didn't reach for me. She just stood there in the frame of the door, with the wind brushing her hair across her face, and realized, maybe for the first time, that I was never going to save her again. I didn't invite her in. Didn't ask her to leave. Just stood there, one hand on the edge of the door, waiting. After a few seconds, she turned and walked back toward her car. Didn't look back. Didn't say goodbye. The gravel shifted beneath her tires as she drove away. And I shut the door behind her. No slam, no lock, just the click of someone choosing peace over repair. A week passed. No more calls from her. No texts. No knocks. Just silence, but not the kind I feared. Not the kind that waits to ambush you at night. This was a silence I had earned. A silence I had built. Each morning, I brewed a cup of black coffee in a chipped mug left behind by whoever last rented the trailer. Each evening, I sat on the porch, the woods breathing in and out around me like they didn't care what I'd left behind. No sirens. No slamming doors, just birds, wind, and stillness. But the outside world doesn't disappear just because you do. And so, eventually, it began, the unraveling. The first call came from the college registrar's office. Rachel hadn't told me she'd re-enrolled Megan, her daughter, for another semester. Hadn't asked. Hadn't told Megan either, I assume, because the deadline had passed. But the payments hadn't cleared. Mr. Reynolds, the voice said, polite but already annoyed. Your payment method has been declined. Would you like to provide an alternate card? I almost laughed. Instead, I said, I'm not responsible for Megan Reynolds. There was a pause. She's listed as your dependent, the woman said, more careful now. She was, I said, not anymore. I ended the call before she could pivot to guilt, or legal terms. That afternoon, I checked the shared account Rachel used for the kids' expenses or had used. It was still open, but empty. I hadn't touched it. I just let the auto-debit starve, let the balance run dry. A day later, another call, this time from the orthodontist's office. Megan's braces were midway through treatment. Rachel had set up a payment plan months ago. With my card, I canceled it. The office manager called me twice. The second time, her voice dropped. We'll have to suspend her treatment. Then suspend it, I said. That was the first time I felt it. Not joy, not vengeance, but clarity. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making them hurt. It was about accuracy. I was simply giving them the version of me they'd already declared. The version with no obligations, no presence, no name. And the world doesn't run on love. It runs on paperwork. And my name was being erased one document at a time. The next week, Megan messaged me directly. Hey, Mom said something happened with the payments. I stared at the screen for a long time. Her contact photo was still a selfie she'd taken in the car I'd bought her. Laughing, holding up a coffee I'd paid for, on the way to a school I'd funded. I typed, you told your mother I wasn't family. She agreed. So I stepped out. Then I blocked the number. 3 days passed. Then the knock came. Not Rachel. Not Megan. But Rachel's ex-husband, Megan's biological father, Rick. I hadn't seen him in years. When Rachel and I got married, he vanished like steam. No support, no visits, no birthday cards, just this shadow that Megan clung to in stories, as if she could resurrect a man who'd only ever loved himself. He stood outside my trailer in a polo shirt 2 sizes too small, arms crossed like he was doing me a favor. She's your daughter, he said without greeting. You raised her. I leaned against the doorway, watched him the way a man watches a slow leak. She's not my daughter, I said. She made that clear. So did her mother. Rick laughed, short, bitter. You're really gonna do this? Let her braces rot? Let her drop out? No, I said. I'm going to let you handle it, like you should have from the beginning. His face twisted. He wasn't used to being spoken to like that. He was used to women apologizing for him, children idolizing him, and men staying quiet to keep the peace. Be a man, he snapped. I was, I said, for 10 years. That's the problem. He started to argue. I shut the door. He stood out there for a while, thinking maybe the scene wasn't over. But I'd already left it. There was no applause coming. No curtain call. Just the rustling of trees and the sound of a man who finally had to be a father. I sat down, poured myself a glass of water, and watched the sun pour through the window like nothing had happened. Because it hadn't. Not really. What was happening now, this was just math. Balances evening out. Later that night, Rachel sent an email. Subject, can we talk? I read it, deleted it. She sent another. Subject, it's about Megan, this one I opened. The message was short. She's scared. She doesn't understand. I think you're taking this too far. You've always been her father. Don't punish her for what I did. I didn't reply, not that night, but I thought about it. Thought about Megan's face. The way she used to come downstairs in the mornings with her blanket wrapped around her shoulders like a cape. The way she called me Pops before she was old enough to know why that mattered. She had been 5 when I met her. Quiet, suspicious, holding onto her mother's leg like I was a stranger at the door. I'd spent years earning her trust. Teaching her how to ride a bike, tucking her in after nightmares, braiding her hair on the mornings Rachel was too hungover or too rushed to care. I had loved her, fully, fiercely, but she wasn't a child anymore. She was 17, old enough to parrot her mother's disdain, old enough to roll her eyes when I offered advice, old enough to say, "You're not my real dad." She'd said it once, not in a scream, but in a sigh, like it was obvious, like I was a placeholder, like everything I'd done was just extra, not required, not real. I thought love would change that. That one day, when the world was less confusing, she'd look back and see the man who stayed, not the man who left. But instead, she looked back and saw a man she could do without. So I wrote back, "You don't get to ask for my heart after you've spat in it. Tell her to ask her father. I'm not in this family anymore." I never got a response. 3 weeks later, the trailer park manager knocked. Said there was someone outside asking to see me. He didn't like visitors. Said it made the neighbors nervous. I stepped out expecting Rick again. But it wasn't. It was Megan. She stood beside a beat-up sedan, her face streaked with tears and road dust. No makeup, no pose, just a girl who had been told to fend for herself and found out the world charges interest. She didn't walk up to me. She just called out, "I don't have anywhere to go." I didn't answer. She took a step forward, holding something in her hand. A photo. It was the one I'd taken of us at her 8th grade graduation. Me, arms around her shoulders, her face beaming. Back when she still wore the locket I gave her. Back when she still called me Dad in public. She held it up like proof, like that moment could reverse what came after. "I'm sorry," she said. Not loud, not desperate, just quiet. And too late. I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, "I loved you like you were mine." She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "But you weren't," I finished. "And I see that now." She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "You have a father. He's breathing. Go to him." She stood there for another minute, waiting, but I'd already turned back toward the door. As I stepped inside, I paused, didn't look back, just said, "Don't come here again." Then I closed the door and locked it. When I left town, no one stood in the driveway, no arms wrapped around me, no voices begging me to stay, just the sound of gravel under my tires and the slow, sinking weight of something I'd spent years building caving in behind me. But as I pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Hank, our neighbor from 2 houses down. He was standing on his porch, holding a cup of coffee, one hand raised in a slow, silent wave. No words, just a nod, the kind men give each other when they see something hard finally snap. He'd seen more than he ever let on. At the gas station, I paused to throw out a travel mug. It was one of those cheap things you get as a Father's Day gift from the clearance aisle, brushed aluminum plastic lid. A message printed in fading letters. "Best stepdad ever." Megan had given it to me 3 years ago, her handwriting scratched on the bottom with a silver marker. I didn't throw it in the trash, didn't want to be dramatic. I just left it on the curb beside the pump. And I drove away. I kept driving until the air got thinner, until I could breathe again. until I passed the county line and the radio stopped picking up the station Rachel always listened to. Then I shut it off altogether. For weeks I stayed gone, not hiding, not sulking, just gone. I changed my number, set up a new mailing address, canceled all digital ties that tethered me to a house I no longer lived in. I forwarded the final utility bills to Rachel. Some she paid, some she ignored. I didn't follow up. Eventually, the lawyer sent word that the divorce had gone through. The papers came with a short note from Rachel scribbled on the margin. I wish you'd at least said goodbye to her. She meant Megan, but that wasn't a goodbye I owed anymore. They had said it first, not in words, but in posture, in silence, in the way they let me carry every burden while holding none of the gratitude. A man doesn't stop being a father because of one fight, but he does stop being a fool when he finally accepts that love, without respect, is just labor. And I had labored long enough. Rachel kept the house. She couldn't afford it. I knew that. The taxes alone would drown her in a year. But I left it anyway. Let her live in the shell of what we tried to build. Let her wake every morning in the kitchen I remodeled, open the fridge I paid for, stand in the closet I expanded to hold her chaos. Let her remember. Let the walls speak when I no longer would. A few months later, my sister sent me a message, just a photo. It was Rachel, sitting in the county clerk's office, filing for a name change, not her maiden name, not mine, just blank initials, erasing what was left. I stared at the image for a while, then deleted it. I didn't feel sad, didn't feel anything, because you don't mourn what never saw you. You don't cry over being forgotten by people who never really looked. I spent that winter in a small cabin further upstate. Not fancy, not rented, just old, abandoned, and paid for in cash. I fixed the roof, repaired the pipes, dug out the wood stove. I made it livable. It was the first thing I had built for myself alone in over a decade. And in that silence, that pure, earned silence, I thought about everything. About the nights I stayed up balancing bills so Megan wouldn't miss out on a school trip. About the time I sold my motorcycle to pay for Rachel's surgery. About the mornings I drove Megan to school in the pouring rain while Rachel slept through her alarm. About the meals, the memories, the holidays carved out of nothing. All of it real, all of it mine, and all of it forgotten the moment I stopped performing. That's the thing no one tells you. You can give everything. You can sacrifice quietly. You can show up every day with your arms wide open. But if they've already decided you don't count, they will take it all and never look back. Love isn't what you give. It's what they acknowledge. And they didn't. Not once. Not when I signed the adoption paperwork Rachel tore up. Not when I sat in the emergency room beside Megan after her first car accident. Not when I gave up promotions because someone needed to be home for dinner. I was there. They just never said so. They let me hang like a shadow over someone else's idea of family. Useful when needed, disposable when not. And when I finally stepped away, when I finally let the mask drop and said, "No more," they didn't try to understand. They just begged for the services to resume. They missed the bank account, not the man. They cried for the driver, not the father. They mourned the labor, not the love. Even Rachel, especially Rachel. She told herself for years that the way I stayed was proof that she was right to take me for granted. That men who don't leave won't ever draw a line. But every man has a final quiet. Mine came with a latch on a bathroom door and a steam trail of betrayal curling into the hall. It came with a phone call to a stranger who understood more in 10 seconds than my wife had in 10 years. It came with a folder handed to my sister. Documents weighed down by evidence, not emotion. Came with no screaming, no fighting, just me, walking out. Because when someone tells you to disappear, they never imagine what disappears with you. The bills, the protection, the quiet fixes, the anchor. And once it's gone, they realize how much of their life was tied to someone they never thanked. They panic. They beg. They we asterisk p asterisk nice memory. But it's already over, because a man doesn't stay to be bled dry. Not when his blood is worthless. I stayed long enough to carry them through their fragile years. Long enough to believe that my love was enough to change them. Long enough to be broken. And then I stopped. Because dignity has a cost, and I was done overdrafting mine. I didn't expect forgiveness, didn't need redemption. I needed peace, and now I have it. So if they ask why I never came back, tell them this, because I listened, because I believed them when they told me I wasn't family, because I finally saw myself through their eyes as a utility, not a man, and I walked away like one. They'll tell their version, that I was cold, that I abandoned them, that I let pride win over love. But love without respect isn't love. It's servitude, and I served long enough. So now I leave you with this. Was I cruel? Was I wrong to draw the line so late? Was I selfish to want more than just being useful? Or did I simply do what any man would do, standing in the ruins of a family that never saw him? Tell me, would you have stayed? Or would you have locked the door too?